So, over the past few years, the global box office has been dominated by superhero movies, especially Marvel superhero movies. While these movies are clearly popular with most, there's a lot of criticisms that are commonly made against this one genre of film, and that's what I'd like to dig into a little deeper today. Famous actors and directors like Jodie Foster and Martin Scorsese, and many others, have attacked superhero and Marvel films as being just spectacle movies that are shallow and have no deeper meaning. And in a lot of cases, this is true. A lot of action and superhero movies just have a lot of pointless explosions and fight scenes and no deeper meaning. However, I think people often make the mistake of judging the genre of a film and not the actual content of the film. Take, for example, the Christopher Nolan film The Dark Knight. This is a movie in which the protagonist can clearly be compared to the United States and the West after 9/11. In this film, you see controversial issues that the United States went through throughout the War on Terror, like torture, government surveillance, and liberty versus security trade offs, and it was explored in a very creative and effective manner. In the aftermath of 9/11, many films would attempt to accurately depict how the War on Terror had affected the United States, but I would argue that no movie did it better than this Batman movie. This is a clear example of how a superhero or an action movie can be political or even philosophical. On a slightly less grand level, the first two Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films covered the very relatable theme of dealing with the responsibility that comes with adult life and growing up. And again, despite the countless coming of age movies that come out every year, I would argue that no movie addresses this theme better than Spider Man 2, which is really a deep character study disguised as a superhero movie. Though, throughout the MCU, we have seen many deeper themes or societal critiques, and for example, the criticisms of US foreign policy in Iron Man 1, commentary on returning soldiers with PTSD in Iron Man 3, criticism of immigration policy in Thor Ragnarok, criticism of government surveillance and the dangers of too large or too powerful of a government in Captain America the Winter Soldier and Civil War, and global warming in Infinity War. I'm sure countless others that I'm missing. So, the criticism that superhero movies can't be, political or philosophical, that goes too far, I think. There are some valid issues with these movies, though, some valid critiques. First, and I think most importantly, it's, the overuse of CGI, which makes them feel like video games rather than real movies or cinema. I was never a huge fan of video games because I think there's kind of a certain level of realism and relatability that you can't get with animation or CGI. Now, I understand that in some instances you do need CGI to make these movies possible, and I'm not against it completely. But I would argue is that these films, the films and the scenes in these movies that are the best aren't always the largest action sequences, but it's the scenes where they focus on the character development and the deeper themes and meanings that can be explored through these character developments that are the best scenes in these Marvel films. Much like how Captain America went from a soldier almost loyal to a fault to his country in Captain America the First Avenger, to someone who is increasingly skeptical of the authority figures around him, and the increased surveillance state and level of control that the government forces to seek on the world, both with the Helicarrier and the Sokovia Accords in those two films. It was this development of Steve Rogers, and not the CGI fight sequences that allowed the Russo brothers, the directors of these two films, to explore deeper topics. CGI often takes away from deeper story arcs or character development and replaces it with unrealistic and frankly sometimes silly looking explosions or fights. To make uh, future Marvel and superhero movies work, directors will need to learn how to use CGI a little less and need to rely on more practical effects. Another criticism, especially of Marvel films, is that they kind of have cookie cutter plots and villains. And while there is definitely some truth to this, they could also be argued that for a lot of these films, the villain isn't the main point of the movie. The point of Iron Man 1 was to show how his experience had changed Tony Stark, something that would be explored more in further films. The villain in that movie isn't really the point. He wasn't supposed to be that significant. This allowed for deeper character development and deeper philosophical themes about, kind of the negative impact that Tony's actions had had on innocent people as a defense contractor. But despite the fact that I love Marvel and am continuously impressed with their films and content, with the exception of maybe only one or two of them, especially Captain Marvel, not a fan. I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe should have ended with Endgame. Think about it. Over the past decade, Marvel has meticulously crafted this grand narrative piece by piece. Multiple different character arcs, themes, and storylines all manage to merge into this one final act. And quite frankly, I was really afraid that it wouldn't work. But it did. You, in Avengers Infinity War and later Endgame, these films perfectly concluded what is now by far the most successful film franchise that has ever existed, blowing away its nearest competitor, Star Wars. But it's like Tony Stark said, part of the journey is the end. And this was a spectacular ending for this film franchise. And while I am excited for some of the upcoming films, and I've even liked what I've seen from WandaVision so far, I can already kind of see where this is going. The MCU is going to keep going essentially until it stops making money, and that means there will inevitably be a drop in quality that will take away from how great the franchise once was. I talked about this a little in my Beatles video I posted, I believe, a week or two ago. The Beatles were so great because they broke up relatively early, so the quality of music throughout their run was always great. They never got bad. I remember going to see Avengers Endgame in the theater. I was very excited. And when I got to the theater, there were lines everywhere to see this film. Everyone wanted to see this movie. The movie theater was packed. The audience went crazy throughout the film. People laughed hysterically at the funny moments and cheered and screamed so loud during the action scenes that the whole theater was shaking. And they genuinely were set at the end of the movie to say goodbye to some of their favorite characters whom they've been following for so long, nearly a decade. I never experienced anything like that before in my life at a movie. I've gone to a lot of movies. I'm a huge movie fan, if you can't tell. And I don't think I ever will experience anything like that again. As a genuine lover of film and cinema, I don't want anything to ever take away from how great of a finale that was. Also, I know that the critics are right. There is more we need more kind of diversity in the genre of movies that come out. the big blockbusters, they can't, the big money makers, I should say, they can't just be superhero movie films forever. Well, while I enjoy the ride and reject the idea that these films are inherently shallow or meaningless because they have superheroes in them, I also believe that it's time for the superhero era to end, especially the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That doesn't mean I don't think more superhero movies should come out, but I just think that it shouldn't just be superhero films, which pretty much is what it's been for the past few years. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, and let me know what you'd like me to talk about in my next video. Thanks.